uh, I was going to tell a story about Mark Twain. As he was getting up in years, a friend asked him, he says, Mark, now that you're getting up in years, how's your memory? He says, my memory's getting better and better. I'm even remembering things that never happened. But I remember the things that did happen regarding Our Lady of the Angels School very vividly. Even though the first book was published in 1996, I remember vividly the day that that happened. I was at the Daily News. I was one of their reporters. And Bill, I forget his name, Bill Mooney, our rewrite man, was holding a phone to his ear. He was just a few feet away from me, and he yelled out to everybody else in the newsroom, we've got a school fire on the west side. So all heck broke loose at the Daily News office that day. Photographers are rushing out, reporters, and the same way with the other three newspapers in Chicago, the Sun-Times, the Tribune, and the American, as well as the TV stations and the radio stations. There was a big rush to the location of the school fire. And I'm quite sure you people know the basics of it. It was the third worst school fire, school tragedy in our nation's history. There was one in Texas that killed over 400 children because of a gas explosion. And there was another one in the early turn of the century near Cleveland that killed over 100 kids. But this, of course, was the worst tragedy of that type in Chicago. And it affected so many people. So after I started talking to a number of the photographers and the reporters, I said to myself, someday somebody has to write the complete story of what happened there. Why it happened, how it happened. And it took me years before I really went to work on it. I felt in the beginning, so close to the date of the tragedy, that it'd be hard to go to talk to parents who lost a son or a daughter. So I waited quite a long time until the early 70s. I started to put a lot of the information together by visiting the parents who lost their children, by talking to the surviving nuns, by talking to Father Olabeni and another priest by the name of Father Hund, who were there that night, that day afternoon, to get the first-hand story, plus as many students as I could, plus firefighters. And I was fortunate enough to get the interviews of the 3 lieutenants who came in in the first companies for the school fire. There was Engine 85. The lieutenant on that engine was Stanley Wojnicki, a Polish man. Ladder truck 35, and I was able to talk to Charlie Kamen, who rescued about 7 or 8 kids himself. And I talked to members of Squad 6, which were the first ones in there. And I talked to Jack McCone, who was trying to break the falls of some of the kids who were jumping out windows when the fire occurred. The first alarm came into the Chicago Fire Department at 2:42 in the afternoon. And one of the problems I was trying to solve was why that fire was not recognized earlier than that. And finally, through all the interviews I had with different investigators, I found out that the fire was set by human hands. One of the investigators told me that. He said there was nothing down there in that stairwell on the northeast corner of the school where the fire actually began that would have caused the fire, except that it had to be set by human hands. One of the investigators told me that. So, in any event, I proceeded to interview these lieutenants. Wojnicki, I went out to his house, and he broke down and cried. This was years later after the school fire. And I realized then how much he was a professional firefighter. And many years later, he actually broke down and cried of what he saw there and what he had to do. He got bawled out by Fire Commissioner Bob Quinn, because he was on the engine company, that Quinn thought he should have been breaking the falls of kids starting to jump out windows. But his job as a firefighter, on the engine company, was to put water on the fire, which he did do. And he felt terrible that he was kind of criticized by the fire commissioner for doing what he was supposed to do. And then Charlie came in. He came in on the ladder truck, which was actually the second ladder truck to get in there, but it was right at the start of the fire, where he got a ladder in. The school, of course, was built like a square U, and in between the U, there was the north wing where all the deaths occurred, and the south wing of the school, and an annex in here. And in between was like a cement courtway, cement ground, remember that? And on the north side of the north wing was hard ground there. And second floor windows, second floor classrooms where all the deaths occurred. That was 35 feet from the ground. Picture yourself as a young kid in 4th or 5th grade looking down, how far it must have seemed to make a jump. But a lot of kids did, they jumped. And the firefighters that were coming in, they were trying to break the falls of these kids. They even had to get a net to try to break the fall of some of the kids with a net, and some of them would miss the net. And all these were stories that you just don't forget, and how it affected all those men, all those firefighters. And the second book I wrote, besides To Sleep with the Angels, was titled Remembrances of the Angels. And I went and talked to the students who were there that day, who are now adults in their 60s, and all of them were very helpful, and they told me exactly what they did to save their own lives. And I remember this one little girl in 4th grade. She said, I threw my glasses down there. I was up on the 2nd floor in the middle room where most of the children, the largest number of children died in that middle room. It was a 4th grade room. And she said, I wish I was down there with my glasses. But she finally jumped and she broke her back. I talked to an older person who was in 8th grade at the time. He said the only way I was going to save my life was to jump out that window. And he jumped out, and believe it or not, he landed on that concrete in the courtway. And he said, I just damaged my shoulder. But he said, it's a wonder I didn't kill myself. So all these stories, when you talk directly to people who are involved, they were there. And I told them, all of them were quite successful in life. One of the men that I talked to went to Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame, became